Welcome to the Mental Fitness Podcast in partnership with Eliza Chat, where we explore real tools and stories for building mental strength in the modern world.
Today we are joined by Bill Schuffenhauer, an Olympic silver medalist and three-time Olympian who has transformed his athletic career into a mission focused on coaching, leadership, and high performance. Bill has gone from intense training cycles to guiding executives, teams, and youth on how to build the mindset, habits, and resilience required for long-term peak performance. His story is a powerful example of reinvention, grit, and the human capacity for growth.
Bill was at the top of the sports world as an Olympian, and he's killing it now as an executive coach and entrepreneur. But what happened in between? What happens when an athlete's identity and focus shifts from sports to other areas of life? We'll dive in today to the identity crisis and mental health journey that ensued in Bill's life. So Bill, you've got quite an impressive background. You were a silver medalist in the 2002 Winter Olympics. I was living in Salt Lake City at that time, and that was an exciting time. So that's just first cool, and it's awesome to meet you and have an Olympian on the show.
Well, thanks, brother. I appreciate you guys.
Maybe to start off, Bill, when you look back at your early life, what do you feel planted the first seeds of, that athletic drive or ambition?
Yeah, pretty interesting question. Because I grew up in such a negative space with, a very, very well-known street drug mom, on and off the streets, in and out of 17 foster homes. And so the inspiration wasn't so much to pursue sports or anything in particular. The inspiration is, how do I, as a seventh grader at the time, try to figure out how not to create a life very similar to my mom, the one that she was providing for me, and realizing that someday I was going to have to grow up and have a family of my own and be a responsible adult and all that fun stuff we talk about. It was about that. Like, how do I not duplicate and become another statistic, which a lot of people fall into, right? Hey, my mom and dad did it this way and I was exposed to it. And so that's why I'm a victim of the circumstances. And I just knew that there had to be something else. And when I moved from Salt Lake City to Roy, Utah, that's when I first had an opportunity to see kids at school that were happy and dressed nice and weren't gangbangers and weren't always in trouble. And that gave me the first glimpse of wow, the grass in this situation can be greener on the other side. But how do I go about, figuring out what that looks like? I'm a seventh grade kid. I'm living, with my grandmother at the time instead of my 18th foster home. So I didn't know exactly where to go. And,
wow.
Fortunately, I had some coaches and teachers at the junior high that I went to in Roy, Utah that, were willing to invest their time in me outside of regular school hours to help me understand, what does this other life look like? I'm so used to the chaos and drugs and crime and all that stuff. So how do I take that mindset out of there and redevelop this new world that was wow, crazy, really cool to me. So that was the initial first thing. And funny enough, one of the kids that I was following around, his name's Jake Schultz. He's in my documentary. I followed him out one day after school because I was just what does this kid do after school, right? And interesting, as a seventh grader, I was looking to this other kid for inspiration, so emulating what he was doing. And he was out there with a bunch of other kids, handing off a baton, jumping over stuff. And I was I don't know what these guys are doing, but I'm good at running from cops and jumping fences, and I think this will apply here. And, so originally I went out for track and field, something to occupy my time so I'm not out, gang banging and getting in trouble with my friends that I had at the time. And ended up just being really good in track and field. I actually got kicked off my 8th grade year. The first year I went out for track and field, I actually got kicked off the team for mouthing off to the coaches. You can take the kid out of the streets, but sometimes it's hard to take the street out of the kid, is what I said back then. But, I just realized that it was an opportunity where I could turn a negative circumstance of being this ghetto kid who was used to running from cops and doing stuff like that. And, saying, okay, how do I transition these skills over to what these guys are doing? And, track and field, that just gave me a different view of life on what I could do to change my stars and create this life by design. And again, thankfully, my grandma bought into it and she was supportive, but she didn't know how to do it because I was a hellion kid at home. And, was able to rely on the coaches and teachers to kind of help guide me and help me understand, like, if you want to do X, you can't do this, right? And just kind of laid it out for me that way. So that's how it all got started.
That's incredible. I didn't know that you had been in foster care, and I know that my wife and I have fostered children over the years. I know statistically speaking, the success rate, however you define success, of kids with that kind of childhood trauma is not great. And that's amazing. So first, just the fact that you've a functioning adult, let alone an Olympic medalist and all these other things, that shows a lot of resilience and strength. And that's great to hear.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And at the end of the day, that's what it was all about, is to not become that statistic and try to see if I could change my stars and if I could create a life by design to hopefully be, whether you want to call it a role model or a mentor or whatever to humanity, that, just because your life started off this way doesn't mean it has to go your whole life that way. We don't have to end up, being another statistic, being a victim mentality and creating a life of excuses. And so at the end of the day, that was my biggest wish, is to hopefully be in that position. And I think I get to do a lot of that today. So thank you.
What moment or influence set you on the path toward Olympic competition? And it was bobsledding, right?
Yeah.
How did that all start?
Yeah, and interesting enough, that still stemmed back from getting involved with sports originally, because the mindset I had was, how do I change my stars, right? How do we take something that traditionally, like you said, Dave, is a statistic that is not good, and how do we change that? And, as I got more involved with sports, I had to get more involved with my education, as well as just get more involved with understanding how to be a good team player and work with teammates and coaches and teachers and all that stuff. And did track my junior high, 8th grade year. My 9th grade year was winning all the competitions. And then when I went into high school at Roy High, the coaches up there, the track coaches, approached me and said, hey, we were watching you in junior high do all these events, and, you seem to be really good at all of them, and like you really like them. We want to introduce you to this event in track and field called the Decathlon. And I was like, okay, well, what is the Decathlon? And of course, they tell you it's 10 events competed over 2 days and considered one of the best athletes in the world. And I was like, that's what I want. I don't even care what it is or what it takes. But if I could become one of the best athletes in the world coming from where I came from, that would be really, really cool. And so I just really started being hyper aware and hyper learning from the positive influences I started to encircle around with more and more. And so the Olympics originally was, wow, if I could achieve this, then I can change the whole direction of my life. Like, because back then I was thinking, I was going to go this way because that's what my mom did. But with this opportunity of becoming one of the best athletes in the world, how cool would that be? And I still have those memories of having that conversation, even with myself. And then as I started, going to competitions and was cheered on by my friends and family members and started getting more recognition, I was just like, yeah, I definitely want to pursue this wholeheartedly. It helped that I was good at it as well. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how do you go from a high school track athlete? Is there like a scouting team, like the U.S. Olympic bobsled team is out looking at top track athletes around the country? Where did that first conversation? Did someone approach you, or how did that happen?
Yes. So I trained for 3 Olympics in track and field. So that was the goal. That was the whole focus. And in 2000, when I was the very best prepared mentally, emotionally, physically, I did an early decathlon at Utah State and was one of the first athletes in the world that scored over 8,000 points at that year. And that score put me number 1 in the world. And so things were just going really, really well that year. And then we got towards the end of the season. I did another decathlon early on, scored more points. The rest of the world had done their decathlons, so everyone had kind of caught up. But I was still ranked top 4 in the world at the time. And we had planned, I'd already qualified for Olympic trials, already made Olympic standard. And we were like, let's go to BYU and just do a warm-up meet 2 weeks before Olympic trials. And we're like, okay, great. It's a good idea. We're everything's going so well. We're just going to keep the body tuned up. And the second event of the long jump of the first day, it was raining down at BYU. And my first jump, my foot slipped and I basically ripped some tendons and stuff in my ankle, sprained it so bad. We kept trying to push on, and maybe this is also a good lesson, is that we went into panic mode and didn't really take a look at the severity of the injury and pushed on. So finished the long jump, got a mark that was not great, went and did the shot put, and I was a spinner, so I had to spin off that same ankle, and we wrapped it up and shot it up with numbing agents. And then the fourth event was the high jump. And long story short, the ankle was so bad that I normally opened up at 6'4" in the high jump. And we were like, all right, let's just bring it down to like 5'7", which, I mean, I could do that with my opposite foot in my sleep normally. And it was just so severely damaged that I blew through all 3 heights. And I remember on the last one, laying on the high jump mats, the high jump bar fell and was on my back. And I was like, that's, I could feel the pain from that. And then it was raining and the raindrops, I remember them falling on my face. And then I just felt the warmth of the tears starting to roll down my face because the realization of my Olympic dreams are over and it's done with. And I was disappointed. I was sad. I was distraught. I mean, all the words you could think of. I was just absolutely devastated that I put so much effort and focus and so many other people that were there to support me. And I felt like I let him down. And I literally left all my gear. And if you guys know how much gear a decathlete has to carry with them, I left it all there. Pole vault, poles, javelin, shot puts, 20 pairs of shoes, wow, bags, everything, and just went home and felt sorry for myself for probably a good 3 months. And to be absolutely transparent, and I think we need to talk about it, when we're talking about mental health, that led me down a very, very dark, deep depression. I started drinking every day, drinking till I passed out every day, stopped going to school at the time, and was just 100% a victim of the circumstance and didn't take accountability for it, right? And, fortunately, I had somebody reach out to me, and I hadn't answered their call like several times, but it was somebody I knew. And I finally jumped on the phone, and they're like, oh my gosh, I got to tell you, there's this event called Bobsled and the Olympics are coming to Salt Lake City and you should do it. And I was like, what in the flip are you talking about? What is bobsled? And we don't have the Olympics in Salt Lake City. They were in Sydney, Australia. They're like, no, the Winter Olympics. And I was rigid. I was like, there's just no way. The Winter Olympics, coming to find out more about them at the time, that's a year and 3 months away. There's no possible way that I'm going to go from one sport into another one at this level, compete, make the team, and everything's all hunky-dory. And they're like, well, you should just try it. Like, let me show you a video. And they showed me Cool Runnings. And I was like, okay, I can see the athleticism, the possible potential. And then they showed me a video of Team USA competing over in St. Moritz, Switzerland. And that's where I really saw the true, and I'm going to say this word even though it's not my favorite, the true physicality that it took to be a bobsled athlete. And at that point in time, I was kind of given the option. I can either sit here and be a victim of my own circumstances in this world I created and feel sorry for myself and blah, blah, blah. Or I could take a look at this opportunity, even though it seems so far-fetched, and just give it a shot. Because what if it does work out? What if it does work out? The kid that came off the streets of Salt Lake City turns his life around to make the Olympics in Salt Lake City. And we're like,
that's cool.
What if we could write that story? How cool would that be? Right?
Wow. And that childhood dream of being one of the best athletes in the world.
Oh man, it's still surreal every day, right? Because there was the journey it is what it is. My whole life has been this roller coaster of the good, the bad, the ugly. And the thing is, I think that I've done a pretty solid job over the years, and I would say especially the last almost 10 years is taking 100% accountability for everything that's going on in my life and stop playing the victim. And I came to the realization, maybe we'll touch upon this when we get to it, but I came to the realization that no one was going to come save me. No one's going to fix everything. The only person who could truly fix all the issues that I had going on was myself. And just like I did in junior high is reaching out to my coaches and my teachers saying, hey, I need help. My team got together, my family, and we just said, hey, as I mentioned, what would that look like if we could create this story by design? And we were like, man, that would be like a dream come true. So let's just take all the passion, desire, and drive we had in track and field and drop it over here into this bobsled bucket and just go for it. Why not me? Right. And I think that's what a lot of people need to ask themselves a lot more is why not me? Why can't I be a super successful person in my own right on how I define that? Right. Mm-hmm. And, so we did. We just went for it and had the same support group, and that's very important too to ensure that we communicate this to people that may watch this. Is the only reason I was able to do that stuff is I realized I couldn't do that journey on my own. There's no way that I could have done it on my own. I had to have support group. I had to be vulnerable, and that's one thing athletes do a good job most of the time. Is like when things aren't going well, it's like, hey, my hamstring hurts, right? Or whatever. And so just being vulnerable in that space, and accepting the help and building a community around myself was the only way, because there's no way that an athlete from one sport should be able to transition to another sport at that level, go to the Olympics and win the first Olympic medal for Team USA in 46 years.
So clearly, you've got an incredible amount of physical athleticism and ability and talents. Just looking at you, shaking your hand yesterday, I could feel that. So you've got a lot of that, and to be able to succeed at the highest level in multiple sports is very, very rare. However, you talked about after that injury, that mental spiral and how difficult that time was. Where did mental focus matter more than physical ability during that journey?
The beauty is, like, we have this amazing thing called a brain, right? And we are 100% responsible for what goes in and what we allow to stay into our brains, right? And so for me, I realized that a kid coming from the ghetto, a kid coming from a background where there was no hope, that yes, did I have some physical abilities? Absolutely. But the mental abilities are even better than the physical abilities, right? And I see it all the time with several thousand teammates that are Paralympians. Like, I'm like, man, you were a military guy, got both your legs blown off, so now your physical attributes are not what they used to be. How do you get up every day and put on your prosthetic or whatever it is and go up on that mountain and ski down and you're one of the best in the world, right? So that's an example of how important our mental health is, not just for like work or business or sports, but as a whole. My mental training, which I consistently do every single day, still today, is extremely important for everything I do. Because is it true that I've gone through a lot of deep, dark depressions and suicides and all that stuff? Yes. Do some of those emotions and feelings completely go away? No. But what does step in is the constant practice of my mental health training, understanding who I am, my strengths, my weaknesses as a human being, so that when I do come across like situations where I'm like, oh man, that was a bad thing out of left field, right? And because things happen in life, it's like, okay, but now I have the mental capacity and the training and the education to actually navigate that. And I have like practices that I implement too. If I ever start getting down, if I ever start feeling those negative emotions kind of holding me back, I have a process in place. First and foremost, I'll go and tell my wife, hey, I'm struggling right now. And she'll ask, like, what's going on? I'll be like, I don't even know. I have no idea. I'm just not feeling good. I'm, really, really depressed. But I ensure that I don't do the first thing what a lot of people do, and that's like go back within and isolate themselves. So
yeah, and I just want to call out a couple things there. One, you've developed self-awareness to know when you're starting to feel that way, and then two, you're willing to communicate that to another person. That vulnerability or willingness to be vulnerable and connect with another person, as combined with your self-awareness that you're starting to feel down. Those are two of the key pillars of what we define as mental fitness, is self-awareness and connection to others. And I just wanted to point that out. That's incredible that because life goes up and down for all of us, and there's no one who's just always on top. Unfortunately, there's some that are often always on bottom, but there's no one that's always on top. We're going to always have these ups and downs. And I just love how you have learned to recognize when you're starting to head that direction, and then you start to take action.
Yeah. And, to be super transparent, Dave and Luke, I know we haven't gotten to this part of the story, but we can kind of go back and forth if we need to, is that I did at one point in time in my career make the mistake of trying to figure it out on my own. And this was after all this stuff. And that was after I retired from being an athlete. And I went through 8.5 years of some of the darkest, deepest depression, suicide attempts, because I was like, oh, I'm a 3-time Olympian now. I'm tough and strong, and I've got experience. But I also had this mindset too that I was like, oh wow, I don't want the whole world to know that now Bill Schuffenhauer, who came from nothing and created this life to be an Olympic athlete, an Olympic champion, now has fallen completely back off and is back to square one.
Yeah, that's not uncommon. I right. Reading about Michael Phelps' story, that when he was feeling depressed, he felt he couldn't tell anyone because he didn't want his competitors to know.
Right.
He was exposing a weakness. He was one of the greatest Olympians, and he didn't want anyone to know that he was struggling because it would weaken his image. But he had to learn. Yeah, that's great.
Well, and as you guys know, too, I mean, even more important than in the sports world, in the corporate world, and we're doing a lot better job at it. Corporate world and the military, you just don't talk about, oh, I'm feeling bad, because then they're like, oh, maybe he can't do the job that I, or her that I gave him. And then everyone's in fear that they're going to get fired because they're not feeling good one day or maybe a week or a month or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm grateful that there's organizations like you that are creating, opportunities and solutions for people that they can use these tools and resources to address some of the things they got going on. But it is true, right? As an athlete or military or anybody, as a dad, right? Sometimes you don't want your family to know, like, hey, I'm not doing well. I'm struggling. I'm feeling bad. I never want to go back to that dark space, man. It's not fun. And so, I made a promise to myself that anytime, I do potentially fall into those dark spaces, that I have some tools and practices and resources to address it. And it doesn't mean it goes away right away because it's an emotion, but it's a light of hope so that I don't continue to go down that rabbit hole and eventually be in this dark space that I don't want to be in.
And I want to put a pin on that kind of, identity transition. We definitely want to talk about that today. But I want to unpack what you're just saying. And you said previously, when you have these moments of self-doubt or when you see yourself tipping towards, that darker mindset, what are some of those tools, routines? You mentioned first off, reaching out to your wife, reaching out to someone else, right? But what else? Can you unpack some of that for us?
One thing about me in life and business is I'm really curious about how things operate, whether it's the human mind, an organization, or whatever. Starting in 2018 is when I got connected to one of my companies. TMIC Global stands for the most important conversation. And we started, my partner, he wasn't my partner at the time, but he and I jumped on a call one time and he's like, "Hey, I got to ask you a question." I was like, "Yeah, sure. Shoot." And mind you, at this point in time, this is 2018, massively depressed, alcoholic, suicidal. I was, hanging out with a lot of the wrong people, spending, $400 to $500 a day at the bar. I was planning out my next suicide. And he's like, "Do you lead a life by default or by design?" And I was like, "What is this guy talking about? What?" And he's like, "Well, let me explain it to you. Let me unpack it. If you lead a life by default, then more than likely you're not happy with your life. Your relationships are sour. Your company or the company you work for is not going well. There's all these excuses. It's victim mentality." And as he's saying this, I'm checking off and I'm like, "Yep, 100x, 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 100x. And he's like, "Well, now on the opposite side, if you leave life by design, that means that you're truly intentional about everything you do in life. Your relationships are good, your job's good, all those things." And I was like, "That is not me." And he's like, "For most people, they lead life by default and they're impacted by their external things in society and family and friends and jobs and all that stuff." He's like, "But if you lead life by default, it's not too late to take 100% accountability for the architecture in which you created and then start to acknowledge, what are the things in your life that are no longer serving you? And then let's one by one start to declutter those things out of your life." And that includes people, places, things, family members, whatever. Whatever is not serving you, we need to declutter those things out of your architecture. And so that was initially how this all started. And then I started realizing that there's different practices. I constantly am doing after action reviews in my personal life and to understand okay, we just went through a whole bunch, whatever that may be. How well did that go? What did we do good at? What did we do bad at? What could we do better at? Who do we need to include? Who do we need to exclude? With TMIC Global, we do a Monday through Friday free meditation. A lot of it's on ontology, so the practice of who we are as human beings. So I attend that every day, and I've done so since 2018. All the practices that I've done, I've gotten, certifications and coaching and all that stuff, which a lot of mental health kind of transitions into that space. But I think more than anything is just realizing that I am totally in control of my own life, and I am 100% accountable for my own life. And I have to be hyper aware of the things that I'm allowing to come in and out of my life. And if I'm married now, gratefully, beautifully married now to amazing, amazing woman. But if I was dating some gal that, we're dating and we started having conflict and banging heads, I can't go and then blame her for my reactions to that situation. I have to take accountability for that. So as opposed to allowing situations to get out of control in my life at this point in time, is I do take 100% accountability for it. I have to do one of Jack Canfield's equations, which is E plus R equals O, which just means you have an event plus a reaction or a response equals the outcome. And so I always try to take the response, because that means I'm taking a timeout, saying, okay, with the end in mind, what do I want this outcome to be like?
Yeah, reaction is default and response is design.
100%, right? So that's a practice I use all the time. And I always tell people I'm probably one of the craziest people I know because I'm always having self-conversations with myself. But one of the things that humans do is they tend to focus on the negative conversations they have with themselves, right? Oh, damn it, I didn't do a good job, or man, I sucked, or whatever. And I don't have those conversations like that. It's like, oh, wow, that didn't go as planned. Okay, AAR, what can we do better, right? It's a constant practice of all the positive things rather than focusing on the negatives, because the negatives are just built to like pull you back down and keep you in that dark space. So.
Yeah, it's interesting as you've explained your story from childhood, going to Rory, you've kind of had this growth mindset and this self-awareness along the way, right? Like you've always seen that potential. It's like, yeah, I want to reverse this trend. I know I can become something more. So that self-awareness has been so key, it seems, in your journey. But I think that's a good distinction. Self-awareness isn't being, critiquing yourself so heavily and just be like, man, I'm horrible. It's more of that kind of growth mindset. It's like, okay, I failed. How can I do better?
Right. Or like, I'm feeling bad. I'm depressed. Like things aren't going well. Like, okay, let's take a time out. Let's have this conversation. Yeah. Why am I feeling this way? And if you can't answer it, that's why I'm a huge fan that I feel like humanity's here to be of service to one another. Right. And, even getting to meet you, Dave, like, and Luke, even with you right now, like, I know that if I started getting down on myself, I know I could probably call one of you guys and say, hey guys, I hate to bug you right now, but I'm struggling with something. And the normal people that I would reach out to are not available. Do you guys have like 5-10 minutes? I just need to unpack stuff.
Absolutely. And that you think about it that way is so important, because just too many, particularly men, but everyone, just turn inward and choose not to reach out. I would rather it wouldn't bother me, but I'm saying I'd rather be bothered by all my friends than just hearing after the fact that they were going through a tough time, or even more tragically, they didn't make it through a tough time. That's the worst.
Well, and you think about this too. I mean, I'll focus just on, for now, the athletes in the military, right? We come from a background of a lot of structure, a lot of team building, a lot of positive growth mindset. And then when we transition out of that, our mental health, we allow it to take over. And then we go from being organized, structured, team, people we can rely on, to like, now I'm isolated by myself. Oh, I'm going to figure this out on my own. And the reality is, like, don't go play in a world you have no business playing in. And that's the world of self-isolation and victim mentality, because there's no equation within that realm that equals success, that equals healthy mental health, that equals happiness. It's anytime we get in an isolation space, or a victim, or I can do it on my own, it's never, ever, ever, I've not seen it be a good, situation for anyone.
Yeah. And even if there is initial success of you trying to do stuff on your own, I mean, there's the lack of community, like you're saying, that connection to others. Like, you're going to be peaked unless you tap into that, because you can read all the self-help books, you want, but unless you tap into community, like that seems like a huge part of the equation.
Yeah.
So this conversation's great. I'm imagining there's listeners who are like, okay, so we're invited to start thinking about bobsled team. I just want to close the gap on this. Was the peak, the high, the emotional high of this experience, was it the training? Was it the actual event? Or was it being on the podium? Or what part of it was sort of when you look back was the pinnacle moment?
Yeah, it's kind of a two-part answer. Back then, the pinnacle moment for me back then was, this is probably get emotional for me, but it's so beautiful for me. But that pinnacle moment for me back then was when I had the opportunity to walk out on the stage during the medal ceremony, see thousands of family and friends in the crowd holding up signs, my grandma holding up a sign saying, in Spanish, mijito, I told you dreams do come true. And in that moment, I just reflected on the journey, right? The entire journey, the good, the bad, the ugly, the doubters, the conversations that I heard as a young kid that you're never going to amount to anything. I hyper focused on the entire journey. And instead of having the mindset of like, oh, I told you so that I could do it, it was just appreciation of the journey that I went on, because without that journey, I wouldn't have been in that moment at that point in time. And so that was just so amazing to, stand here in Salt Lake City and look at the same mountains and the same streets where I was homeless and ate out of garbage cans. And now I'm standing on a podium, not even a block from garbage cans that I slept behind. And I'm being recognized as one of the best athletes in the world. And that's where it all started. That's the inspiration. So back then, that was the moment. If you ask me now, the hyper-focused moment was the journey, is understanding how did this start and what were the stepping stones that got us to that point to celebrate, not just with myself, but, my family and friends here in Utah, Salt Lake City, and the nation. And because it was during 9/11 worldwide, right? And that's the important part for me now, is really understanding the value of that journey and being strategic and not giving up on myself multiple times when I could have, and just realizing the appreciation of all the things that happened for me to get to that space.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible.
You were making me emotional when I was just thinking about it, and just the location of where that took place.
Yeah,
with your own journey. But I want to just point out, I think it's very interesting that, of course, at the moment you're on the stage and getting the medal was the highlight. But I also like that later in life, as you reflect back, that moment was singular and meaningful and significant. But the more meaningful part was the journey.
Right. Well, because that's where, like, when we talk about what are the tools that you have in your toolbox, the tools were not the win. The tools were the journey. That's where I acquired the tools, right? And the people and the friendships and the relationships. And so that's why that has now transitioned to be the most important part, because yes, I did acquire a lot of leadership tools and overcoming adversity and all those things. And so that's why today that's the most important thing, because yes, don't get me wrong, winning the medal was phenomenal. Like it still is today, phenomenal. Like I can look at this little thing right here and be like, man, this little thing right here meant so much to not just myself, but family, friends, and people around the world, bobsled fans, Olympic fans. And at the time, 9/11, because we had an opportunity to really try and bring the world together during a global nightmare, if you will. So yeah, I'm going to sit here and blab on more and more, Dave. So.
Oh no, I could listen for hours. I'm
glad you guys came back, so we rounded out that Olympic journey. That's so powerful. Yeah. And maybe now we can go back to that pin we placed on that identity transition, post Olympics, post one of the greatest athletes in the world, right? You talked about this a little bit, that conversation about TMIC and was kind of a point, but what helped you move towards a new purpose after the Olympics, after your career?
Yeah. So, as I think, Dave, you kind of caught wind of Michael Phelps' story, because his story and mine kind of came out at the same time. He and I were both interviewed by HBO at the same time, because there was a lot of buzz back then, and there still is today, just not as much, of the issues that athletes face when you go from a world of structure, organization, super high level leadership, super high level strategy, super high level training, mindset, and then all of a sudden that's gone. No more White House visits, no more golf tournament charity events, no more traveling and being recognized around the world, no more podiums, standing up there And when you go from that to what I would consider, like, at the time, oh shiz, what do I do now? I don't have practice to get up to. I don't have to get in shape. I'm not representing Team USA in a global, level. I wasn't prepared for what was to come. And I think that's the key thing is I didn't prepare myself for retirement. I didn't have anyone else prepare me for retirement. Hence now I'm like, I need to be accountable for that. And that led me to a complete loss of identity, because I identified myself as this Olympian. People were calling me, oh, Billy the Olympian, right? It still happens today, funny enough. But I came home to a family I didn't know, a family that didn't know me because I was on the road 10 to 11 months out of the year, very similar to like military as well. When I did come home throughout the season, I was home for a week and then I'd take off for 4 months again. Well, there was no more taking off. My career was over. And it's like, okay, well, where's all the opportunities? Because back in the day when the coaches told me like, oh, if you ever make the Olympics, all the doors would open up to you and you'd never have to search for anything and all these things will happen in your world. And so I was like, where are they? Where's all the opportunities, right? I was expecting like my door to be knocking down from all these opportunities, but that's not the reality of what happened. I wasn't a high-level athlete that had a multi-million-dollar contract or any of that stuff. So I came home to like nothing in a way. It's like, okay, what do I do with myself day to day now? And unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, I was like, I'll figure it out. I am an athlete. I just retired 3 Olympics, Olympic silver medal, 2 world championships, multiple national championships. Bill Schuffenhauer, the Olympian, can figure this out, right? And the more I tried to figure it out on my own, the further the hole I was digging in life. And I wasn't willing at the time to take that accountability or recognize how bad things were getting for me. But it got really bad. I was, I started off just drinking more and hanging out with friends that I thought were friends. Obviously, I know a lot better now, but, doing things I didn't normally do, partying, drinking. I had 3 DUIs, 2 aggravated assaults with a deadly weapon. I was on probation from the DUIs and so many alcohol-like issues. I was having to go to court because of my anger issues because I was starting to get so mad at everyone else. Again, victim mentality was everyone else's fault.
Yeah.
And I kept digging a hole deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And, that led to, I retired in 2010 and in 2016, a lot of that just came up. This also happened when I was drinking, got an argument with the gal that I was dating at the time. And I just said, you must not love me. And she's like, in the heat of the moment, she's like, you're right. I can't stand you. And I attempted to take my life right there in front of her in our house. Fortunately, obviously I'm still here. But that depression went on from 2016 until 2018 again. And I recall very, very clearly a good friend of mine, his name's Judge Dorita, and he reached out to me and he's like, I see that you're getting in all this trouble and you have a lot of issues. And he's like, I just want to tell you, man, I love you and you've had such a great sporting career, but if you get in trouble one more time, I might have to be the judge that sends you to prison. And that was a massive wake-up call. And at that same point in time, and again, I didn't have the mental capacity at that time to really get out of that situation, but that was a wake-up call. Whether you want to call it the universe, God, whatever, that's when I got connected to Chad at TMIC. And that's also when I got connected to Jack Canfield, the creator of all the Chicken for Soup for Your Soul books. And I was like, well, let's see how these things are going. So I got certified by Jack and I was, doing all the classes at TMIC. And that's when I had the thought and Chad even told me, he's like, man, you're such a high level athlete. Like you've got to have so many success principles. And I was like, I do, right? Because I normalized like my career, completely normalized it. And when he had that conversation with me about life by default or by design, and then the conversation I had with Jack about taking 100% accountability, I was like, okay, before I go and follow through with this next suicide, I'm going to give this a shot. But I'm going to do it a little bit different this time. I'm not going to try and do it on my own. I'm going to try and become vulnerable. I'm going to try and take 100% accountability for all the things that happened in my life. And that took a solid 2 years to like get that full buy-in to myself. But I have the drive and passion as an Olympic athlete to do this. But I got to do it in a situation kind of like before. And I've got to surround myself with community. I've got to take accountability. I've got to, first and foremost, take that accountability that I've created a really crappy life for myself. Because anytime we start to point blame at anyone else, that's not solving anything at all, right? And even if it was somebody else's fault, and this is a hard concept for people to really understand, it's like, how do you still take accountability? And the way I did it is like taking timeouts to look from the outside in. Who was I being as a human being? And it was then that I realized, I'm like, man, I'm partying all the time. I'm blowing all my money. I can't pay my employees. I'm making every mistake possible under the book. My ex-wife had taken my daughter away. That was the hardest one to like take accountability. But when I put myself in her shoes, she was looking at this guy who was a complete disaster. And she's like, now is that going to fall over into like my daughter's life? And so I understood, from that point on what she did. And so I just made a promise to myself, like, okay, we're going to stop making excuses in life, and we're going to start reaching out to people that, are successful, and start recreating myself and stop living in this victim mentality, because it was continuing to go downhill,
So that's incredible. And we talked earlier about how much the mental part is more important than the physical part as an athlete. You mentioned that you have some mental health practices that you do every single day. And this is the Mental Fitness Podcast, which the whole idea is, what are the things that we can be doing on a regular and daily basis for our mental health? Maybe sort of as we kind of wrap up, you can describe what your daily patterns are related to mental health. And then what's the one idea, if there's only one thing that listeners could take away from this, what's the one idea that you hope they hear from this? And then after that, we just have a little tradition at the end. We just go rapid fire question. We have like 5 to 10 questions. We just ask you, and you just say the first thing that comes to mind super quick, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah. So my mornings currently, some of this doesn't have to do with mental health, but I get up at, usually about 5:30. I'm currently fully enrolled in the University of London because I'm just a curious, ongoing learner. I don't need the degree, but it is what it is. After I spend, so from 5:30, 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock is probably the most important part right there. So that's when I put everything down. Again, in TMIC, we do our daily meditations every day at 8 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. So unless there is something massive that I can't attend that meditation, I'm on that meditation every single day. And it is one of those things that it's no compromise unless, like I said, something else happened that I have to attend it for some reason. But I would say 99% of the time I'm on those meditations. But I've been doing them since 2018. I've heard the same meditation over and over and over and over again. But as soon as I get done with that meditation, if I have extra time, I subscribe on YouTube to ancient Stoic philosophy. So I'll go on there and I'll listen to a Stoic philosophy video. I'll write down notes and figure out like, how can I apply some of these principles to my own personal life? And those are, and outside of that, when I get done with the meditation, when I get done with the Stoic philosophy, I take some time just throughout the day to just be grateful for the life that I currently have. I am grateful for the friends that I have. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful for where I live. I'm grateful for all the big things, but more importantly, the small things. And what I want to get back to on that is what I've done is I realized that I created a massive amount of success as an athlete. And when I look at the foundation of what it took to do that is I practiced every day as an athlete. Every day I practiced something, a technique, maybe the same one multiple times over and over again. And so I do that in my daily life today. And again, it's not a compromise, because if I don't show up for myself, there's no way that I'm going to be able to show up for anyone else and have it sustainable.
That reminds me of in the book, The Slight Edge. If you've heard that book, he talks about his successes and failures in his business life. And it's people stop doing the things that got them successful, which is why they fall. And then they're like, oh, I'm failing. I need to start doing all these things again. And then they're successful, and so they stop doing them. I just like that realization that to be a successful athlete, you got to practice every day over and over and over again. It's the same for everything.
For humanity.
It's everything, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
The closing question here, when you do think about your entire journey, Bill, for the listeners, what's one single idea you hope listeners carry with them after this episode?
This is this is going to be one of those responses that it's so obvious and people have heard it. But what I want people to I want them to recognize and really pay attention and actually take action towards it. And this is a little cliche maybe, but you don't have to do this journey by yourself. In fact, I would highly encourage you not to do it by yourself. I'm in this really cool space, and I apologize, I'm kind of answering your question a little long here, Luke, but when I survived that first suicide attempt, and the doctor told me the next day, he's like, "You're lucky you're here." And I was like, "No, I'm not lucky, because I was really trying." I'm in a beautiful space right now that I could look back on when that happened in 2016 and when I started putting the effort and the work in to be a better human being, all the amazing things that I've been able to experience since then. This is one of them, right? And so again, just going back to that cliche, if you will, is don't do this journey of life on your own.
That's powerful. I love it. Okay, rapid fire. We're just going to ask questions. You just say first thing comes to mind.
Okay.
I'll start. Book you recommend the most?
You know what? I would say The Master Key System.
The Master Key System.
Master Key System by Charles Haanel. This book was written, I think, early 1900s. You read a chapter, one chapter a week. That's it. And they're short chapters. And then you meditate on it throughout the week.
I'm ordering it right now.
I just added it to my Amazon account.
Yep, I'm just doing the same thing. Okay. Go ahead, Luke.
Coolest person you met at the Olympics?
The volunteers, the people that put in the work to make that event happen. Because without them, it would have been, I don't want to say meaningless to be, a champion at the Olympic Games, but without them and without their cheers and support, it was kind of meaningless. So
that's awesome.
And I could throw out Michael Phelps and Muhammad Ali and the president and all that stuff, but that's a normal question. Always, most people answer with the coolest person, but at the end of the day, it's the people behind the scenes that we don't see that, for me, they're the coolest people.
Yeah. Okay. Ice bath or sauna?
Now or back then?
Either.
Back then, ice bath. Today, sauna.
Nice.
Love it. Last one, early bird or night owl?
Both.
It's because you're so curious and always learning, right?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of getting up early, especially after I retired from sports and we had to do that normally. But I do realize and recognize when I do get up early, my day is probably 10 times better than if I try and sleep in. But my sleep in is like 7:30. So
yeah. As we wrap up, first of all, I just want to thank you for the time. I've been inspired. I've learned a lot. I've got a book to read. I've got some things to implement in my own life. Where can listeners follow your work or connect with you for coaching or speaking or any of those things?
Yeah. So, I mean, I have all the social medias, Facebook, Instagram. I don't do a whole lot on TikTok, but getting ready to. But I am, in fact, this will be the first time I've actually announced it. I'm getting ready to launch a kind of just a 60-week inspiration on LinkedIn. It'll kind of go through all the other socials, but I have my website, billschuffenhauer.com, which is also olympianspeaks.com, tmicglobal.com. Yeah, at the end of the day, social media or my website, but we, on the first of the year, I'm going to launch the Champions by Design, which is also a book that I have coming out. And it's a 60-week journey that I'm just going to post on LinkedIn.
I love that. By design, not default. And we will put all those links in the description of this episode. So people don't have to remember those to go to the description. You can get those links.
Thank you so much, Bill. This was awesome conversation.
Oh, thank you guys, man. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you. And pleasure to meet with you and connect, Dave, as well. And Luke, I'm sure you and I will cross bridges and
yes, I'd love to meet you in person.
A little bit of Eliza chat and focus gate stuff and have some fun supporting each other's goals and dreams.
Yeah. Awesome.
Sounds like a plan.
Perfect.